The Negroni. First made in 1919 for Count Camillo Negroni when he swapped the soda water in his usual drink, the Americano, for gin.
Even though Uncharted 2 doesn't have a release date yet, fans can breathe easy because Sony has officially confirmed that the sequel is happening. That alone gives everyone a reason to be excited, especially considering how well the first movie was received by audiences, both gamers and newcomers alike. So it might be a bit of a wait, but the adventure definitely isn't over. Back in June 2024, Sony's president of international distribution, Stephen Odell, gave a clear sign that the Uncharted sequel was in the pipeline. He included it on a list of upcoming Sony projects, right next to high-profile titles like 28 Years Later and upcoming Beatles-themed films. That was a pretty strong confirmation, even if we haven't heard much more since. It seems safe to assume that development is still moving along, just quietly, perhaps behind the scenes. Producer Charles Roven had already shared a hopeful update as far back as August 2023. He said the response to the first film was very positive, not just from longtime fans of the video game series, but also from general moviegoers who walked into the theater with no background knowledge of the franchise. That's a good sign. When something works for both fans and newcomers, studios usually don't let it sit on the shelf for long. Roven made it clear that they're definitely looking to continue the story. Now, one of the big reasons we haven't seen major movement just yet is probably Tom Holland's packed schedule. He's currently working on Spider-Man 4 and The Odyssey, so there's a good chance that production for Uncharted 2 won't actually begin until sometime in 2025. And while that might feel far off, these kinds of blockbusters take time, especially when your lead actor is in such high demand. In terms of the script, Mark Wahlberg confirmed in early 2024 that it had already been completed. However, he didn't drop any major hints about what the story might be. He did express curiosity about where the next chapter might take their characters, saying he was excited to read the story because the first movie struck a chord with audiences. As for casting, it's basically a given that Tom Holland will return as Nathan Drake. His portrayal gave the beloved game character a new cinematic life, and fans are looking forward to seeing how he evolves in the next chapter. Mark Wahlberg is also expected to return as Victor Sully Sullivan, Nate's fast-talking mentor with a bit of a shady past. Sophia Ali, who played treasure hunter Chloe Fraser, is also likely to return. Her character had a compelling dynamic with Nate in the first film, sometimes flirting with him, sometimes double-crossing him, and their rivalry could continue to unfold in unexpected ways. In Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, Chloe was Nate's romantic interest for a while, so the film might dive deeper into that if it chooses to borrow more heavily from the second game. One of the biggest setups from the first movie was the reveal that Nate's older brother Sam is actually alive and sitting in a prison somewhere. That was dropped in a mid-credit scene where we saw him scribbling a cryptic message to Nate telling him to watch your back. That opens the door to a much larger family-driven narrative in the sequel. Fans of the games know that Sam plays a significant role in Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. And although we don't know who will play him in the movie yet, director Ruben Fleischer has a few names in mind. He's been clear that introducing Sam properly is important, just not guaranteed to happen immediately. But beyond returning characters, there's room for some exciting new faces. For example, one possibility is that we'll finally get to meet Elena Fisher. In the video games, she's a journalist and Nate's main love interest, eventually his wife. She hasn't been introduced yet, but if the sequel wants to explore more of Nate's emotional side or build toward a larger story arc over multiple films, Elena would be a great character to bring in. We could also see the introduction of another major game villain like Rafe Adler. He's the primary antagonist in A Thief's End, with a complicated history involving both Nate and Sam. That said, because the first movie was a mashup of multiple games instead of a direct adaptation, it's possible the filmmakers might go with a completely original villain this time around. Still, if Sam is part of the story, Rafe could easily show up too, especially if the sequel wants to build a darker, more personal rivalry. Speaking of villains, don't expect to see Antonio Banderas' character Moncada back from the dead. He was pretty definitively killed off in the first movie. Tati Gabrielle's character, Braddock, also seemed to die when a ship crushed her, but since we never saw her body, it's not completely impossible that she could return. After all, in this world, characters fall out of planes and survive, so surviving a shipwreck might not be too far-fetched. We also can't forget Pilou Asbæk's brief appearance as Gage in the second credit scene. He tried to double-cross Nate, only to be stopped by Sully. That little teaser seemed to hint that Gage could be a bigger problem in the future, and he might just be gearing up to take over the villain role in the sequel. So, where could the story actually go from here? The first movie ended with Nate and Sully finally forming a true partnership after a rocky start. Sully had to give up his cut of the treasure to save Nate's life, but Nate cleverly pocketed some gold for him anyway. It was a satisfying conclusion that wrapped up the treasure hunt, but also left plenty of doors open, especially with the reveal that Sam's still alive. The idea of Sam and Sully having a falling out, one that led to Sully leaving Sam behind, adds a layer of emotional tension that could drive the plot of the sequel. It sets up the possibility of a messy reunion between the brothers, one filled with betrayal, forgiveness, and maybe even another dangerous adventure. Although the first movie was loosely inspired by several Uncharted games, it wasn't a direct adaptation. Still, there's potential for the sequel to draw more directly from Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. That game had some of the most cinematic set pieces in the entire series, including an iconic sequence involving a collapsing train in the Himalayas. If the filmmakers wanted to raise the stakes visually and emotionally, that game would be a great foundation. And it sounds like director Ruben Fleischer has definitely been thinking along those lines. He mentioned in interviews that he's eager to bring some of the most thrilling sequences from the games to the big screen. In particular, he's obsessed with the car chase from Uncharted 4, calling it one of the best action sequences ever made, even better than ones he's directed himself. So there's a real chance we'll see that kind of high-octane energy in the next film. Another thing to consider is whether the sequel will introduce a more global scope. The first movie took us from New York to Barcelona to the Philippines, but Uncharted 2 Among Thieves explored places like Borneo, Istanbul, and Tibet. The filmmakers could absolutely tap into that globe-trotting energy, giving the sequel a more expansive, exotic feel, just like the best parts of Indiana Jones or the Mission Impossible series. And then there's casting. If they decide to bring in Elena, Sam, or Rafe, they'll need some strong names. Casting a breakout star as Elena, maybe someone with a mix of wit and toughness, could breathe new life into the story. If they want to go big, they could even bring in someone like Anya Taylor-Joy or Sydney Sweeney. As for Sam, the internet has tossed around names like Jensen Ackles, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, or even Pedro Pascal as potential picks. The casting here could really shape the tone of the sequel. At the end of the day, even though we're still waiting on a release date, there's a lot to look forward to with Uncharted 2. The first movie built a solid foundation, introduced a fun cast of characters, and hinted at plenty of bigger things ahead. Whether the sequel sticks closer to the source material or continues carving out its own path, the world of Uncharted has more than enough story to keep fans entertained for years. So, for now, it's just a matter of when, not if. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.